We have one set of laws in this country, and they apply to everyone.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 times politicians or world leaders got arrested.
Sarkozy has been sentenced to 1 year jail, but he can serve that out at home under house arrest.
For this list, we'll be looking at the most infamous moments in which presidents or prime ministers of the world were arrested and, in certain cases, indicted on criminal charges. Should world leaders be above the law? Share your thoughts with us in the comments.
Hey Mojoholics! For a chance to win cash prizes, play our live daily trivia challenges every day at 3 p.m. and 8 p.m. Eastern only at WatchMojo.com/play.
Number 10. Benjamin Netanyahu. With more than 15 years in office, Benjamin Netanyahu ranks as the longest-serving prime minister in Israeli history. During his fourth term in office, he became the first sitting leader of the country to be indicted on criminal charges.
Israel's attorney general has indicted the prime minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, on multiple corruption charges.
These charges stemmed from three separate cases. Case 1000, in which Netanyahu was accused of receiving gifts, including expensive cigars and champagne, from wealthy businessmen in exchange for political favors.
Simply accepting and demanding gifts, both him and his wife Sarah Netanyahu demanding gifts such as cigars and champagne from very wealthy individuals. Conflict of interest was the key charge against him in that.
And cases 2000 and 4000, in which he is alleged to have made illicit deals with certain media publications in exchange for positive news coverage of him and his family. Netanyahu was officially indicted in January 2020, and his criminal trial began in May, the same month he was re-elected to a fifth term.
Now, for the U.S., there are major political and cultural considerations. Mr. Netanyahu's party has already vowed to expand Jewish settlements in disputed regions.
Number 9. Imran Khan. In 2018, cricketer and political party leader Imran Khan was appointed as the Prime Minister of Pakistan after his party won the majority in the National Assembly. Although a relatively popular leader, Khan was ousted from the seat after he lost a vote of confidence in 2022.
Mr. Khan says he will not recognise an opposition government and blames a US-led conspiracy for his removal. Public opinion is divided.
Following his removal, Khan was investigated on corruption charges. Authorities allege that he had received a bribe worth millions of dollars through the Al Qatar Trust, which he owns with his wife. In May 2023, while he was at the Islamabad High Court, Khan was arrested by security agents in dramatic fashion.
As government anti-graft agents burst in, whisking away the 70-year-old to an armored vehicle which drove off. Khan's supporters calling it not an arrest, but an abduction.
The arrest, which sparked violent nationwide protests, was ultimately deemed illegal by the Supreme Court of Pakistan.
The reason why they are piling up these cases is because of the elections coming up. And what they hope is that they would get a conviction in one of the cases, and I will go into appeal to the Supreme Court. But meanwhile, the elections will be over and I would be disqualified.
Number 8. Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner. After serving as First Lady of Argentina, Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner was elected president from 2007 to 2015, before returning as vice president in 2019. After her 2 terms in office, Fernandez de Kirchner faced numerous criminal charges, including fraud, illicit association, and high treason.
Prosecutors say during her time as president, 2 terms between 2007 and 2015, Fernandez de Kirchner committed aggravated fraud and was part of an illicit association while steering public works contracts to a family friend.
Although most of these were dismissed, she was tried on the fraud charges and ultimately found guilty by a 3-judge panel. She was sentenced to 6 years in prison and banned from ever holding public office.
The decision brings a devastating blow to her supporters, as today she announced she will not run in next year's presidential election.
However, Fernandez de Kirchner, who survived an assassination attempt in 2022, continued to walk free as her position as vice president granted her legal immunity.
Cristina is alive because, for a reason not technically confirmed, the gun, which contained 5 bullets, did not fire despite the trigger having been pulled.
Her subsequent appeal of the guilty verdict is expected to advance to the Supreme Court. Number 7. Najib Razak. Born to a former prime minister, Najib Razak began his political career at the age of 23 following his father's death.
The son of a former prime minister, he was groomed for power and held office for 9 years in a country where the ruling party had never lost an election.
Over the next 4 decades, he rose to the highest office himself, becoming one of the most powerful individuals in Malaysia. Razak's day of reckoning came in 2015 after the Wall Street Journal released an article that linked him to the One Malaysia Development Berhad scandal.
Many Malaysians watched in fascination as police conducted raids on properties linked to Najib Razak, hauling out what they said was millions of dollars in cash, boxes of luxury handbags, high-end watches, and jewelry.
He was alleged to have funneled about $700 million from the Malaysia Sovereign Wealth Fund into his own personal bank accounts. After his party lost the 2018 general elections, Razak was arrested by the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission on multiple criminal charges. He was convicted on all counts and handed a 12-year prison sentence.
Breaking news out of Malaysia. Former Prime Minister Najib Razak has been ordered to serve his 12-year jail sentence after the nation's highest court upheld his conviction on several counts of corruption linked to the 1MDB financial scandal.
Number 6. Jacob Zuma. A former close associate of Nelson Mandela, Jacob Zuma served as the president of South Africa from 2009 to 2018.
Zuma is one of a small number of people to have been democratically elected to lead the Rainbow Nation, fourth in a short line which began with Nelson Mandela.
However, the case for which he faced criminal charges preceded his time in office. Zuma was implicated in the infamous 1999 arms deal, and after dodging legal proceedings for years, he was charged with fraud, money laundering, and racketeering in 2018.
Mr. Zuma is facing jail for refusing to cooperate with this public inquiry into the corruption that flourished during his presidency.
The indictment against Zuma accused him of receiving millions of rands in bribes from the French arms company Thales in exchange for a contract in the deal. Zuma has maintained his innocence in the case, arguing that the charges against him are politically motivated. After failing to appear before a court in 2021, he was arrested and sentenced to 15 months in prison.
No person is above the law, and every person, whatever be her or his rank or condition, is subject to the ordinary realm of the law and amenable to the jurisdiction of its tribunals.
Number 5. Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. The first Brazilian president to win a third term, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva rose from a corruption scandal to an unprecedented victory in the 2022 elections.
He rode to victory, again, based on his support among the working classes and the impoverished people of the country, largely in the north.
After his first 2 terms ended in 2010, Lula da Silva was implicated in Operation Car Wash. The lengthy criminal investigation involved several high-ranking Brazilian officials and the state-owned oil company Petrobras.
Today, the federal public prosecution accuses Lula da Silva of being the general in command of a vast corruption scheme identified as Operation Car Wash.
It was alleged that Lula da Silva had received nearly $1 million worth of bribes from a construction company in exchange for government contracts. He was found guilty of corruption and money laundering and sentenced to 12 years in prison. In 2021, his conviction was annulled by the Supreme Court after it concluded that the lower court that tried him lacked jurisdiction.
The decision has nothing to do with Lula's innocence or guilt. The Supreme Court judge argued that the former president had been tried in the southern city of Curitiba when he should have been tried in the capital, Brasilia.
Number 4. Silvio Berlusconi. During his time as Italy's longest-serving post-war prime minister, Silvio Berlusconi battled numerous criminal charges.
Berlusconi spent years defending himself against charges of corruption. He was sometimes found guilty in lower courts, but used Italy's tortuous legal system to ensure he never went to jail.
From bribery to embezzlement, tax fraud, witness tampering, and money laundering, Berlusconi's political career was riddled with several legal proceedings. Many of these charges ended up getting dismissed, sometimes due to specific laws that were altered by Berlusconi's own government. His first definitive conviction came in the case involving his company Mediaset.
Once a definitive sentence against Silvio Berlusconi, but it could have been worse. He's unlikely to go to jail, and the ban on public office will be re-examined by a lower court.
Berlusconi was accused of tax fraud related to the illicit acquisition of movie rights. In 2012, he was sentenced to 4 years in prison, but only served 1 year of community service due to his old age and Italy's amnesty law. He died in June of 2023, still a serving senator.
He was admitted to hospital on Friday for what has been described as scheduled tests. And then we received news that he was seriously ill, and then a short time later that he had passed away.
Number 3. Donald Trump. Donald Trump faces 4 criminal indictments as of writing. In March 2023, he was indicted for falsifying business records due to his alleged role in hush money payments to adult entertainer Stormy Daniels during his 2016 presidential campaign.
It was made on the eve of the 2016 presidential campaign. It was $130,000 paid to Stormy Daniels from Michael Cohen.
He was arrested on April 4th, 2023. Trump was arraigned again on June 13th for allegedly mishandling classified documents, on August 3rd for alleged attempts to overturn the 2020 presidential election, and on August 14th for alleged attempts to overturn the election results in Georgia. At the center of the election-related charges are a phone call in which he asked Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger to quote-unquote find more votes for him, and a scheme to submit fraudulent certificates of ascertainment from fake electors.
Some of those so-called fake electors showed up at state capitals where the real electors were meeting. They even created phony certificates like the ones you see here. The goal, apparently, to send through this fake slate of electors to Congress.
Number 2. Park Geun-hye. By the time she was elected as the first female president of South Korea in 2013, Park Geun-hye was no stranger to executive power. Her father, Park Chung-hee, ruled the country until his assassination in 1979. Unlike her dad, Park was removed from office in 2017 after the Constitutional Court of Korea upheld her impeachment by the National Assembly over corruption allegations.
The moment a president was ousted, the head of South Korea's highest court says President Park committed a grave breach of the law. It was against the Constitution and the trust of the people.
Soon after, she was arrested and indicted on criminal charges, including bribery, abuse of power, and leaking government secrets.
Park was found guilty of 16 of the 18 charges, including abuse of power, coercion, and bribery, and said to have taken millions of dollars from the country's biggest conglomerates in exchange for favors.
The prosecution claimed that she had been unduly influenced by her confidant Choi Soon-sil to essentially extort money from multiple businesses. Park was ultimately sentenced to 20 years in prison, but in 2021, she received a pardon from then-President Moon Jae-in.
She's been serving a 22-year sentence for corruption, but the government's pardon will see her released on December 31st, along with around 3,000 others.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into Settings and switch on your notifications. Number 1. Nicolas Sarkozy. Nicolas Sarkozy served 1 term as President of France between 2007 and 2012. Sarkozy lost his re-election bid and was accused of illegal campaign funding afterwards.
Now all this focuses on Nicolas Sarkozy's campaign back in 2012. He was running for re-election. He actually failed to be re-elected, but his campaign at the time was extremely lavish.
While investigation was ongoing, he reportedly tried to bribe a high-ranking judge in exchange for information about the case. In 2014, he was arrested and questioned by law enforcement over the bribery allegations. This resulted in a criminal trial where Sarkozy was found guilty of corruption and influence peddling.
He's now become the only ex-French president to be found guilty of trying to bribe a judge and influence peddling.
The former president faced a second trial in 2021 in relation to the allegations of illegal campaign funding. He was again found guilty in this trial and received a 1-year sentence with the option of serving his time under house arrest.
The only other president convicted by a French court was Sarkozy's predecessor, the late Jacques Chirac. He was found guilty of corruption but not sentenced to jail.